I've wanted to do a larger calligraphy project for some time now. I wanted to do a calligraphy border. I remember going back to my original border that I did, has to be now about 20 years ago. I've posted it on my website. There's about 8 or 9 posts that speak to that border and the different variations of the border itself. I'm going to include a link in the show notes about that. But when I remember back about that original border, it took me somewhere in the area of a month or two just researching calligraphy books and understanding how to do borders from scratch. And then the hardest part was actually coming up with the design that worked for the border. Coming up with the design is the complicated part. Ironically, the easy part is actually inking the work. And that only took me, I remember, about an evening to do, the original one. So looking forward 20 years, what I wanted to do and what I decided to do was come up with a circular calligraphy border based on my original work that was done, like I said, about 20 years ago. And you're going to be able to do this project from pretty much start to finish, and I'm going to walk you through each step in doing so. You're going to need a couple of items for this project. The first is you're going to need a printer or a nearby copy store that will be able to print out a template for you. Second thing you're going to need is a calligraphy pen of approximately 2.4 millimeters width, or somewhere within that area, and any make of calligraphy pen is fine. You're going to need some calligraphy paper. You're going to need some kind of board or table to do your work on, a flat surface. You're going to need a scanner or a nearby copy store that will scan your work for you. And then finally, you're going to need Inkscape software and you're going to need GIMP software. And these are equivalent of Adobe Illustrator or Adobe Photoshop, respectively, in order to do this project. The difficulty level of this tutorial, or this series of tutorials, is you're going to need some kind of beginner calligraphy skills. And I would actually recommend that this is a really good exercise to do if you're just starting out with calligraphy. And the reason I say that is because it's phenomenal practice that you can get from doing this border and getting familiar with the calligraphy pen. So it's a great starter exercise. You're going to need some intermediate GIMP skills, and you're going to need some intermediate Inkscape skills. I'm going to be covering the following topics in this overall 5-part series. The first part really speaks to the sketches and the border pattern and the efforts it took to create that. In part 2, I'm going to be covering the templates themselves, and you'll be able to download 3 PDF files that you can print on any printer. In part 2, I'm also going to be covering inking the work. And then in part 3, I'm going to be going over the Inkscape elements. And then in part 4, I'm going to be showing you how to prep your work, how to scan your work, and then how to move it into GIMP to do the final image processing. And then in part 5, I just have my the final works themselves and my thoughts about the pieces. This was the first sketch I did in the project, and I just wanted to get my head in the game with doing calligraphy borders, and this was a great way to just start loosely, roughly, kind of lay it out, and just get a sense of the border that I wanted to create. The next one I did was kind of, I used a circular sort of angle. I created a circular kind of template, and I just kind of roughed this out quickly. And I did you notice the center of the diamonds aren't filled in, a little bit different, and that's actually ended up in the final copy. You notice it's very rough and it's very loose, and that's the purpose of a sketch, of course. And in this version here, I did, I tried something, I really didn't like it, with little fleck marks that move away from the upper and lower extremities. Something I tried, I just didn't like it. The next one here I did, I changed around the inner border a little bit. I moved the center alignment off a little bit, and then I replaced the diamond with just a single stroke from the pen. In this version here, I actually tried using lettering, and that's going to come up a little bit later, but I wanted to do some lettering and just threw that together as an example in the interior of it. And then I started to get a little more serious and actually start to lay it out on graph paper to try and get a sense of what this was going to look like. The design on the right actually came closer to the final design. What you see in the middle is actually just a layout of the number of pen nibs or widths to get the sizing right that I wanted. And the piece on the left was, again, just another sketch of what I wanted to accomplish. And then I had this idea about a medallion. And I thought, well, gee, wouldn't it be neat if you have this completely circular design? Wouldn't it be neat if you could break it up at one point, either at the top or the bottom, and have the lines kind of move into a special design? And this was the first kind of design that I had with that. And when I did that, I realized, well, gee, wouldn't it be great if I could take that medallion and make that multi-purpose, meaning that you could use it for different things. You could put someone's initials in it, you could put a year in it, you could put a date in there, you could put a logo, anything like that. And that's where that kind of design came up with. And this idea of making this calligraphy border multi-purpose kind of carried through with another project that I want to do before year end, which is a December calendar. And this is kind of a sketch here of it, but this circular border design would be the primary aspect of it. And then I would replace the diamonds with numbers. And they would appear around the circle, and they would be, the days of the year, with 25 being, the most prominent sort of day. So that's a little side project I have on the go for year end sort of thing, or I should say for December. And the final piece here is really the final sketch that I wanted to create. And this is using, the real pen, using the real dimensions, and giving it kind of a final test of how it looks. And this is never used in any sort of piece here, in any art, but it gave me a good sense of the design of it. And that then led to actually inking the work, creating the templates, inking the work on proper calligraphy paper, and then moving it into the digital processing environment.